Hi there, I'm Joel Hunter. I am a refractive surgeon, and what that means is I spend my career trying to help people see clearly without glasses or contacts. As you may have guessed, LASIK is a big part of that, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What is LASIK? How does it work? And will it work for me? So, to start off with, LASIK is an acronym. It's spelled like this. And it's spelled like that because it's laser assisted in situ keratomyosis. So first off, you can see why they had to come up with an acronym for that, because that is a mouthful to say. You can also see that it's a little bit hammered in there. It's not really naturally to have it be an acronym, because you have to do the L, and then the AS comes from here, and then the I, and then the K. But all of that means that you're using a laser to assist you. In situ means you're doing it on somebody who is going to be able to use it afterwards, rather than just an eye that's in a jar somewhere. In keratomyosis, kerato is cornea, and myosis just means you're reshaping that. So why would that be helpful to reshape a cornea? Well, to answer that, I'm going to have to draw an eye just so you can see how it works in the first place. This would be the globe of the eye, and then on the front of it we've got this extra dome here, this clear dome. So when you look at somebody and you see the color of their eye, what you're doing is you're looking through this thing right here, which is the cornea, and you're looking at this iris. Now all of this stuff is in 3 dimensions around, but the cornea is the dome on the front of the eye, and then there's the iris, which is the colored part of the eye. And then behind that is the natural crystalline lens inside the eye. And it gets held on here by these little zonules, so this is called the lens. And then back here in the back of the eye, lining it, but attached still. Your DNA is a lot better drawer of this stuff than I am. This is the retina. And so the retina would be the equivalent of the film in the camera. And the eye really does act a lot like a camera. It kind of gets used as this old trite comparison, or maybe that's just in my job actually. I bet people don't really normally go to work and talk about the eye being like a camera, but in my job, every day that comes up. And so the way that it's like a camera is that you have this film in the back where the picture gets focused, and you have these lenses in the front that are focusing the picture for you. There's 2 of them. One is called the lens, the crystalline lens inside the eye, and the other one is the cornea. Now of the 2 of these, the lens only does about 1/3 of the focusing power. The other 2/3 of that comes from this dome of the cornea. And so ideally what you want is that whatever you're looking at is getting focused into a clear and tiny inverted picture on the retina back here. And for some folks, that is the case. The far-sighted mountain man has great vision, and it was less common back in old days to have nearsightedness, which is lucky for them because they didn't have glasses even until a couple hundred years ago. But nowadays, it's much more common to have vision that's bad for one of 3 reasons, and sometimes a combination. Either you're myopic, hyperopic, or you have astigmatism. So, myopia, hyperopia, and astigmatism, all 3 of those are different causes for light coming into the eye to get blurred in some way. It's not making it clean and clear onto the retina. And so when that happens, with myopia, things are getting focused too far in front of the retina up here. With hyperopia, they're getting focused too far back here and behind the retina. With astigmatism, everything coming in is just getting a little bit squished and distorted. If you've ever seen a funhouse mirror at a carnival or a fun house. Maybe you have one in your house. If you've ever seen one, the way that those work, they give you a funny looking distorted image because instead of it being this nice flat reflective surface, there's a weird curvature to it. It's the same general idea on the front of your eye. If there's a weird curvature to the front of your eye where it's too squished in one direction, then you have astigmatism. And it's very rare that someone is cleanly and purely myopic or nearsighted, where they can only see up close and not far away, or very cleanly and purely hyperopic, where they have far off vision that's usually pretty good, at least until their 40s and 50s, but they can't see up close. There's usually some combination here where there's a little bit of astigmatism involved. It's really hard to find somebody that has zero astigmatism, which is interesting because most people, for whatever reason, that word, that diagnosis is very well known by people, which is weird because you don't hear people talk about, I don't know, homocystinuria, which is another diagnosis that just has a weird name to it. But everyone knows about their astigmatism. And so a question that comes up often with LASIK is, can you fix astigmatism? And the answer is yes. As a matter of fact, the answer to all three of these, can you fix them with LASIK, is yes. Now, it's important to make sure that you're a good candidate. But when you're figuring out candidacy for LASIK, what's involved in that is figuring out for your occupational needs, your hobbies, the age that you are, the anatomy to your eye, the thickness of your cornea, the curvature of your cornea. There's a lot that goes into that stuff, which is why testing is so important, why all the diagnostics aren't just there for like bells and whistles so that you can print out, you know, a picture of what your eye looks like. It's to figure out your chances of having a really, really good outcome with LASIK. So when you're fixing these things, what are you actually doing? How are you manipulating this cornea in a way that is safe and permanent and actually corrects the vision? So that's what comes next here. Here we have the St. Louis Arch. Now, that's not what this is about. Sorry, I have to make my own jokes about this. And the guy behind the camera, no reaction from him whatsoever. I'm going to assume at home you're laughing hilariously in St. Louis. So this is actually a cornea. And so this would be if we took this eye and we laid it, so this person's laying on their back looking up at the ceiling. And so light is coming in through the front of the eye. It has to get focused behind the cornea through the lens. It gets focused on the retina. So if we're assuming here that this is an eye that's naturally myopic, it's nearsighted, this image, if this person's looking at a candle, then when they're looking at that candle, it's getting inverted upside down and it's turned into a perfectly clear candle. As you can see, it's in front of the cornea. And so by the time it actually gets to the cornea, it's this real blurry picture of a candle. And so what you need to do is push that image of the candle back further onto the retina. And this happens for two reasons, by the way. One is an eyeball that's just too long from front to back. And the other reason is there's too much focusing power up here in this lens system in the front of the eye. And so there's not a way really to shrink the eye down and make it smaller. So you have to manipulate this. This also, by the way, is why kids become nearsighted if they're going to become nearsighted or myopic. It happens throughout elementary or middle or high school because you're born with an eye that's about 80% of the size that it's going to be when you're an adult. And so you start off with an eye that's actually, you would have been nearsighted, but it's so small, it doesn't matter. That candle gets focused just right. But as your eye grows, as you're growing, you become more and more nearsighted. And so in 5th grade, your prescription's -2, and then in 7th grade, it's -3 or 4, and it goes up from there. If you're a nerd like me, at a certain point, you're able to guess when somebody got their first pair of glasses just based on the prescription that they have as an adult, because you know when it might have shown up early enough for them to start needing glasses for school. Anyway, when you're doing this with LASIK, the way that you're doing this is instead of putting a glasses lens in front of the eye or a contact lens on the eye that's going to take away this extra power that gets everything focused too far in front of the retina, you're actually changing the prescription on the cornea itself. And the reason that LASIK works so quickly and feels so miraculous is because you're able to hide that curvature change that you make with a laser underneath the top layer of the cornea. So your cornea is ultra sensitive. You probably know that if you've ever gotten an eyelash in your eye, but it's only sensitive if this top layer gets disrupted at all, if there's a piece of dirt there, if there's a scratch on the eye. And so with LASIK, what you're doing is you're taking this top layer and it moves out of the way, very briefly, and then a laser, the one that does the laser assisted part of this, is able to reshape this cornea and decrease the curve of this dome. And what that does is it mimics what a contact lens or a pair of glasses would do, except it can do it much more accurately because you're doing it directly on the surface of the eye. And then wherever you're looking through corrected vision now, instead of looking through the same blurry cornea that you always had before.